Star Fox Adventures is a weird game. It's the odd child in the Star Fox series. You could even say it's really not even a Star Fox game. Adventures was originally an entirely different and new IP Rareware had been working on called Dinosaur Planet during the N64 days. It followed the protagonist of a cat named Saber and a fox named Crystal. Dinosaur Planet was on its way to being a massive project for the N64. At the tail end of its lifespan, aiming to push the limits of the hardware with a compelling plot, characters, and world. Dinosaur Planet, though, never came to become a reality. Legendary game designer of Nintendo, Shigeru Miyamoto, took one look at Saber, realized the resemblance of Saber and Fox McCloud along with all the other anthropomorphic animal designs and decided to slap the Star Fox IP to it. There's been many theories on top of that as to why the decision was made to basically rebrand the project, one of them being with Star Fox being an already established and well-known franchise, it would drive more sales than if it were just Dinosaur Planet, which, from a business side, it makes sense. The other theory is that Shigeru, along with Nintendo, did not want to lose the game of Dinosaur Planet to Microsoft, as this was when Rare was in talks with Microsoft for a buyout during the game's development. Ultimately, Microsoft ended up acquiring Rare, and Star Fox Adventures was the last official Rare game released for a Nintendo platform. As a result, though, development of the game was rushed, and you can certainly not only see it, but feel it as you progress through Adventures. Whatever the reason, the original project was pretty much scrapped. The original game was locked into the vault, never to be released to the public for over 20 years, until someone by the name of Forest of Illusion on Twitter released a ROM of a prototype for Dinosaur Planet on February 20th, 2021. According to N64 Squid, he bought the disc from a private collector in Sweden who had a beta build from December 1st of 2000. This would have probably been around the time that they decided to instead release the game as Star Fox Adventures on the GameCube. From the build of Dinosaur Planet and the official game of Star Fox Adventures, the game is almost a one-to-one replica of one another. There are some things that were altered, of course, due to the change in direction creatively. As previously stated, Star Fox Adventures was originally supposed to be something else and not what it ended up becoming. Nintendo had already laid out a foundation of what Star Fox is with the first game in the series, Star Fox for the NES, and the follow-up with Star Fox 64 for the Nintendo 64. Star Fox for the NES was impressive for its time. It was one of the first Nintendo games to use 3D graphics. This was very uncommon during this time and only possible due to the Super Effects graphics chip they used to display these complex 3D models with polygons. Star Fox 64 took what the original Star Fox did and damn near perfected it. To this day, Star Fox 64 is still the best received game in the series. Everyone I've seen talk about this game has never said anything bad about it, and it really shows the quality and care that went into it, as this is the only game in the series as well that has had a re-release back in 2011 for the Nintendo 3DS. 5 years later, after 64, on September 23rd, 2002, finally a new Star Fox game was released.
Keo Krasoa Palace!
Keo Krasoa! Dude Uwe Kutsak! Keo Uho Dude Whoa!
Is anybody there? Are you okay? My name is Fox McCloud, and you must be the Queen Earthwalker.
No lurud no kadu, ve uwe, moje, Prince Tricky Keo Grutsuf Kehot Rokio Sharp Claws, Ut Kubot Ki Ice Mountain.
It's easy to understand why this game was so divisive within the fanbase. Sure, you still have your rail shooter levels, but they honestly feel like a shell of its former self. You spend maybe 2 to 3 minutes on an R-Wing section and 98% of the game is on foot. With dinosaurs, mammoths, these magical rocks called spellstones, and high beings called Krasoa spirits, there's magic meters, a companion partner in the form of Tricky, prince of the Earthwalker tribe, combats and dungeons like Zelda. So not only was this originally a different IP altogether, but they slapped the Zelda gameplay style to it as well, and now we are far gone from the Star Fox formula people had come to know and love. Now, I know this is going to be a hot take within fans of the series, but I love Star Fox Adventures. I'm going to even go further and say that Adventures is my favorite game in the series. If you're a fan of the series and you say this is a bad Star Fox game based on past entries and what you expected on follow-up titles, I agree with you. However, on its own 2 feet, I don't believe Adventures is a bad video game, just a bad Star Fox game. Even though the game is wacky and the voice acting can be really funny or awful depending on who you're talking to, the game truly does make an attempt at building a world and lore with it. I can appreciate that. It has elements of what made previous Rare games such a joy to play in the past, like Conker's Bad Fur Day and Banjo-Kazooie. To summarize Star Fox Adventures, you start the game off as Crystal. There's really not much to say here. You blink and you're pretty much done playing as her. She hears a distress call, jumps on General Scales' flying ship. Scales tosses her. She goes off to Krazoa Palace to release one of 6 Krazoa spirits after getting access to a Krazoa shrine and completing the test of observation. After releasing the spirit, she then gets captured inside of a crystal. Get it? Because her name is Crystal? Anyway, this test of observation is honestly laughable because of how easy it is, and that's it as far as Crystal goes. Originally in Dinosaur Planet, you were supposed to play and alternate between the 2 playable characters of Saber and Crystal, but that is not the case in Adventures. You solely play as Fox McCloud after the introduction arc. We'll talk more about this toward the end of the video and how I feel about this decision that they made with the final product. After this, 8 years have passed since the events of 64. The story follows Fox McCloud. Him, along with the Star Fox team, are chilling in the middle of the Lylat system. You know, boys being boys. I mean, look at all those pizza boxes. General Pepper pops up, lets the Star Fox team know, hey, chunks of the planet are coming apart, go figure out what the fuck is going on. Fox is looking so uninterested in what Pepper is rambling on about at this point until he hears about his paycheck if he does the job successfully, and off he goes to Thorntail Hollow. After reaching Thorntail Hollow, you're tasked to find the Queen of the Earthwalker tribe. She tells you to go talk to the Warpstone guy and to help her track down her son Tricky, who we previously mentioned at the beginning of the video, the Prince. Tricky is located in Ice Mountain, and the only way to reach this location is through the Warpstone dude. But first, you have to go to the local shop, meet this weird genie dinosaur, buy a rock candy, give it to the Warpstone, and only then will he assist you. I've tried to do more research on this dinosaur shopkeeper, but I found close to nothing about him. I do find him to be one of the more mysterious and interesting characters in the game, but not much is known about him. Another thing of note about the shopkeeper is that you can try to negotiate the scarab prices on items, but he has little to no wiggle room for negotiation. Most you will end up saving is 2 to 3 scarabs at most. Oh, and scarabs are pretty much the currency of this game, similar to rupees in Zelda. They are color coded and each is worth a different amount. After locating Tricky and traversing through Ice Mountain and Snowhorn Waste, you finally take him back to his mother. She ends up very ill, so you have to locate 6 white grub tubs. Once you come back, she tells you to go back to Snowhorn Waste and locate the gatekeeper in order to gain access to the first of 4 spell stones you will have to collect within the game. Side note here, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but for whatever reason they decided to make up a dino language for the game and have the dinosaurs talk in this made up language.
Ut miokraju ui kimo nekt.
Am dek kutsuho keivorik oi. Am edko kutsuho rosvejo evu tashkov suk.
This is only a thing for about the first hour or 2, and then it switches over to the English language once Slippy is done with his translator device. That's the explanation that the game gives you and why they suddenly start speaking the English language. I do think this dino language sounds silly, but I honestly don't mind it all too much. It just gives more life to the world. Regardless if you think it sounds goofy or not. I see some criticism towards this, but it's not a big deal to me. There is a translation chart over at Wikipedia if you're interested about this language that I will link in the description below. So, this is where the chunks of a planet come into play. You got 4 spellstones to acquire and 4 chunks of dinosaur planet orbiting around it. It is your mission to basically go through some dungeons and puzzles, leading you to a final boss and acquiring the spellstone from each location. The first has you going back to Snowhorn Waste. Like the Queen of the Earthwalkers asked you, you need to locate Gorondate, the leader of the Snowhorns and gatekeeper to the first spellstone. After helping him, he opens the gateway to Dark Ice Mines. You beat Geldon, which I have to say is a sick boss fight, and Geldon has a really cool design. You then retrieve the first spellstone after defeating him. The second one has you go into Cloudrunner Fortress, and after assisting the queen of the Cloudrunner tribe/gatekeeper over in Cape Cloud, she opens the gateway. I noticed she doesn't have a name like Grundite, she's just referred to as the Queen of the Earthwalkers. In fact, Grundite is the only gatekeeper of the fort to have a name, which is weird, but okay, just a little fact. Important thing to note too, this is the first time Fox and General Scales come face to face, which is cool.
That set you free. Now where is he?
I do not know what you're talking about.
You will tell me! Where can I find the fox?
He will find you, and he will destroy you.
Stop! It's over, Scales. Leave the queen alone.
Enough! Take her away! The famous Fox McCloud! How nice of you to...
I'm not the biggest fan of the boss battle for this dungeon at the end, if you even want to call it that. You're pretty much racing/crashing into the Sharpclaw that have the second spellstone with them. For the third spellstone, you go to the walled city, though before that, you go and visit Triggy's mother once again. I believe this is the final cutscene that we have with her, but she basically states that her husband, the king of the Earthwalkers, is the third gatekeeper and that his gatekeeper powers to open the gateway are sealed on the door behind her. So with one of the staff's power-ups, you open the door and make your way to the walled city after that. I love this section of the game. It's just dope seeing T-Rexes running about. These T-Rexes are called Red Eyes, just adding to the coolness factor. Another cool fact here real quick. There are 8 types of dinosaur tribes within Star Fox Adventures, and the Red Eyes are one of the 2 that do not speak whatsoever, the other tribe being the Fire Crawlers. These 2 are more feral than the other 6, which is kind of weird if you look at it from a canonical sense, but whatever. After meeting with Tricky's dad, he tells you that you need a silver and gold red-eyed tooth to open the gate behind him to confront the Red-Eye King, the beast you must defeat to get the third spellstone. And now for the fourth and final spellstone. Turns out these fucking Thorntails are all gatekeepers for us to gain access to Dragon Rock. Once we make it to Dragon Rock, we meet 3 rebels from 3 different tribes that were imprisoned, 1 High Top, 1 Cloudrunner, and 1 Earthwalker who you assist. You finally make it to Dracor. Every 10-year-old's edgy cool monster design. Man, did they do Dracor dirty. He has such a cool design, but his boss fight is just you mashing the A button, and for such a badass designed boss to have this much of an underwhelming fight, it just sucks. To make things even worse, Dracor actually played a far bigger role in the original Dinosaur Planet. He was the final boss actually, but here in Adventures they literally gave him the back seat and relinquished him of any depth whatsoever. After taking all 4 spellstones to the seal in which they belong, the planet still does not come back together. This is because Fox is lacking 1 final Krazoa spirit. Fox has been gathering these spirits in between spellstones and taking them back to Krazoa Palace. After turning in the first spellstone, he meets this Krazoa who informs him about the spirits, and this is how he becomes aware of Crystal's existence. This is a good time to mention that the one other tribe I did not mention prior being the Lightfoot, they are pretty much holding one of those spirits locked. The Lightfoot arc of the game is fine, more funny than anything, but I still want to mention it because it's a pretty memorable part of the game. Crystal had completed the first test, the test of observation. The tests that follow in chronological order after that are the test of combat, test of fear, test of strength, test of knowledge, and test of strength, also known as the battle with general skills. The only difficult one of these is the test of fear. You basically have to retain this little red bar within the green meter. The reason it's so difficult is because when it drifts, it really drifts, and along with how hard it drifts, a part of you also wants to watch the cutscene playing, but you can't because most of your attention has to be on this damn red bar and green meter. Another cool fact here, within this room in the test of fear is the only time that these dinosaurs appear within the entire game. They're called shadow hunters, and I guess that would make them the 9th dinosaur tribe in the game. They had more of a presence in the original dinosaur planet than they do here, which is unfortunate because I really do like their designs. I mean, they're pretty much just velociraptors, honestly. The other Krazoa test I would even say poses some sort of a challenge is the test of knowledge, but as long as you've been paying attention to the key items and where you collected them, you should be completely fine. Okay, now we're at the finale of Star Fox Adventures and the most controversial and hated decision that Nintendo made during the development of this game. So, after flying to Krazoa Palace to gather the final spirit, you meet face to face with General Scales one final time. Turns out he has the final spirit within him, but to attain it, you must defeat him. After the cutscene, this is what you get. He's not attacking. They gave him the voice of a regular Sharp Claw enemy. Odd. So you're like, okay, let me go ahead and hit him with a staff combo.
Stop! Scales! You are no longer any use to me! Who are you? I demand you show yourself! I am the one you brought to Krazoa Palace. The Earthwalkers could see me, but you could not. I don't understand. No, I didn't think you would. Your desire for power overwhelmed you and blinded you to the truth inside. Now give Fox what he's looking for. Give him the final Krazoa spirit. You will regret this.
It was in him all this time. But that voice, I recognize it from somewhere.
And just like that, you defeat General Scales. Scales submits to whoever this is speaking to him. Even Scales is confused as fuck. He has no idea what is going on or who he is speaking to. He just obliges and he passes out. Once you go to release the final spirit, something odd is going on with Crystal. Looks like the spirits are attacking her. The Krazoa we previously mentioned told Fox that in order to save Crystal, he needed to gather all of the remaining spirits and release them into the palace. Fox ends up saving Crystal at the end. She takes her staff back. Fox is like, I just saved this girl's life. What the fuck? Why is she being so rude? And then he runs off into his R-Wing to follow the Krazoa head into space. It's never confirmed whether the Krazoa we met a while back and this Krazoa head are the same entity. I know they have different voices, but it's still a question worth asking. The final boss of Star Fox Adventures is Andros. This is very unfortunate. On one hand, I love the way Andros looks here, and his fight is actually pretty fun. I believe it's very similar to Star Fox 64's. That's about all the positives I have, though. I absolutely hate that they did this to General Scales. All of his build-up only to kill him off in the lamest ways possible, to make Adventures more of a Star Fox game by adding Andros at the end. I don't like it, and many people out there don't like it either. During this fight with Andros, Falco actually returns. If I'm not mistaken, after the events of 64, Falco departed from the team, and here he makes a return to stop Andros once more. Memorable moment, I will say that. Andros blows up. Fox and Falco return to the Great Fox and reunite with the squad, and then Crystal somehow gets one of these Sharp Claw ships. I really don't know where she got her hands on this thing. The only time I recall the game ever showing this ship was when Tricky was first revealed to us, but okay, game logic, I guess. Crystal walks in on the Star Fox team while jazz music plays to seduce Fox. Slippy teases him, and the credits roll. While we're talking about Crystal, it's such a shame that she got the shaft as well. She's not the only character whose role was minimized. I've already mentioned General Skills and Dracor. Previously, for example, Fox is basically playing through the story of Saber and Crystal from Dinosaur Planet, and it causes the story to become a bit of a mess. If they have kept Crystal in Adventures as a second playable protagonist, I think it would have not only helped the story be more structured and organized, but it would have helped spice up the gameplay even more. Now, let's talk about Tricky. I see some people mention how annoying this little baby Triceratops is, but I don't think he's a nuisance at all. He proves himself to be quite useful throughout your journey and earns his keep, honestly. The only thing I think is even remotely annoying about him is having to gather blue grub tubs and feeding him, but even that, I don't think it's that bad. Within the game and all of its different locations, you see these little guys jumping about everywhere. Tricky would definitely be problematic if these mushrooms were scarce, but they're not. Fox McCloud is just hilarious in this game. He seems so bothered about everything and everyone, which I think the reason why I find it so amusing is because I'm kind of the same way. I get irritated very easily. Maybe I'm not as much of a jerk as Fox is, but it's still kind of in the same wavelength. This is probably my favorite moment in the entire game. Pretty much, we all know Fox. His mission is to put chunks of the planet back together. But once he rescues Tricky and escorts him to his mother, he's already proclaiming that the mission has been completed and ordering the team to contact General Pepper so that they can get paid. Mind you, he hasn't done anything to save the planet. He just rescued a little baby Triceratops and he says mission complete.
I'm here, guys. Mission accomplished. Contact General Pepper so we can get paid.
She is gonna be okay, isn't she, Fox?
Are you sure you finished down there? The planet's not back together yet.
The Queen needs my help. Fox out.
I don't know if this was his personality type in different entries in the Star Fox series, or if this is what Saber was ultimately going to be, but I still enjoyed his comments and cold-hearted attitude. It was funny. The only other characters I want to mention are Scales and Andros. I just stated a few minutes ago, but it's such a shame that he got this treatment. Scales just reminds me a bit of Zant from Zelda Twilight Princess, nothing more than a placeholder for your typical main antagonist. In Twilight Princess, Zant is made out to be the main force going against Link, though at the end of the game gives you Ganondorf as the final boss of Twilight Princess. Same deal here, Scales is just a placeholder to Andros. Of course, I know why they did this, and it was simply to add more Star Fox to a non-Star Fox game. I think the R-Wing sections of the game would have been just fine and enough to accomplish that. Maybe polish up those levels so that they have more substance to them. As for the final battle, it just ends up hurting the game more to not have Scales be a part of it. They should have just gone full force with the playstyle you had been playing through 98% of the game for the final fight, instead of adding Andros and the R-Wing gameplay. Graphically, Star Fox Adventures holds up very, very well. It's one of the best looking games on the GameCube in my honest opinion. The water looks beautiful, the different environments such as Cloud Runner Fortress, the Walled City, and Krazoa Palace are amazing, just to name a few. The fur on these characters is another standout detail as well. While the dinosaur designs and models are nothing crazy, I do still very much like them. Rare really went all out in the graphics department for this one. The soundtrack for this game is just alright. It's not something I ever go back to listen to, but I do enjoy a select few tracks here. The game does use a lot of stock sound effects used in other media/games, and I do see this being a complaint from a lot of people, but to someone like me who will not notice this at all, it's really not a problem. Voice acting, I already touched on this, but I find it more funny than anything. It's bad in a humorous way. The combat, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's very mid. It's fine for what it is, but it does get old after a while. I just end up avoiding enemies unless there is a required fight. You're really just mashing A most of the time. There are fancy jumps and fancy swings to perform with your staff. You can also integrate some of the power-ups you gain throughout the game, but even still, it's not enough to keep you engaged with the combat. I find myself having more fun with the gameplay as far as puzzles it goes and figuring out how to advance next using your staff, the staff's power, and Tricky's abilities. I did not mention the staff at all, but yeah, this is Fox's weapon for combat, which is actually crystals. She dropped it during the opening scene, and Fox conveniently happened to find it when he lands in Thorntail Hollow. Look, despite the messy development the Star Fox Adventures underwent, I think it's still worth a play. Go download the Dolphin emulator and boot up the ROM. This is how I revisited one of my childhood favorites, and one I go to replay every couple of years. I do own the physical copy, but not a GameCube or Wii for me to play it on, so I did resort to an emulator. If you're into Zelda and are looking for an action-adventure style of gameplay such as Zelda, Adventures definitely fits the bill. It's not as complex or maybe as fun as Zelda, definitely more on the easy side, but I still find it fun nonetheless, in my personal opinion. If you're just a diehard Star Fox fan who refuses to accept Adventures, I understand completely. It is a massive departure of what Star Fox originally was, and I do not blame anyone for being turned off by it. If you're interested in playing the build of Dinosaur Planet that is out there, do so as well, though I do believe it is very difficult to run the game as it does crash a lot. If I'm not mistaken though, there is a team of developers out there working on patches to get the game up and running for a much smoother experience. It's interesting to know what could have been with Dinosaur Planet and what we ended up getting with Adventures after all was said and done. All I know though is I will continue to revisit this childhood favorite of mine even years later after numerous playthroughs.